I mean, I don't know why they would do this if it's going to interfere with their research, which it will if it's more work. A fear that it will interfere with academic autonomy and their freedom. We had one faculty member grieved to the union about having to sign a contract, basically, that they would work in a team in one of our online programs. And they won. The Labour Relations Board sided with the professor. And they said that this is an agreement that should have been negotiated through the union. They didn't actually say it was taking away their academic freedom, but it said this was a condition of service and should be negotiated with the union. Senior administrators, as I mentioned, lack the IT and change management skills to bring this about. And there are ways to go about this that are well known in the business world. Business frequently has to deal with change, and particularly the changes brought about by the use of information technology. And any business school will tell you that there's a whole set of strategies for dealing with this, but most university managers aren't aware of these techniques. The necessary changes are often disruptive. It causes, who wants to go through a Labour Relations Board grievance if you can avoid it? However, I will say that those that do change will lead and will be very important in supporting knowledge-based economies. And this is an economic issue more than an educational issue. If we don't find solutions to these problems, then some countries will become less competitive. The less their universities change, the less competitive they will become economically in the long run. And everybody will suffer as a result.
Technology can, in fact, both widen and reduce access to education. Without careful management and design, it can lead to many problems. On the one hand, there are a lot of managers who have a technological background but who misunderstand the nature of the educational process, while on the other hand, many teachers or researchers are capable of generating ideas but are not inclined towards technological learning. What should managers do to improve the quality of learning with new technologies? And what are the important key elements required for managers to change?
The easiest way to handle that is to have, first of all, a very clear vision of where the institution should go and where you want to take it. And then to look at where does the technology fit into that vision? Can it facilitate or hinder the way we want to go? And the next thing to do is to bring that process of deciding on a vision and how to get there. You have to bring in other people besides yourself, and amongst that you might bring in your head of IT as well as your head of academic departments, and get them to talk these issues through so that they're informing each other and they're learning from each other. So I see it more as a process, of putting in place a process that's ongoing rather than suddenly waking up one day and say we've got to make some decisions about technology. As always, technology itself isn't the issue. Usually the technology is the simplest part of the operation. The operation is the difficult part is getting people to understand the need for change and supporting them as they go through that process of change. That means, particularly on the teaching side, if I can move away from the administration for a moment, how will the technology affect what kind of learning outcomes you can get? Think about what are the students needing in the work environment, and particularly in a knowledge-based society compared with the more traditional industrial society, and how can the technology help you develop those skills? Then you have to try to get people to understand there's a need. The big difficulty is to get them to understand there's a need to move away from their old method of teaching to the new method. And that's not a technology issue, that's a pedagogical issue. And then you look at the technology to see how that could help. We've tended to do it the other way around. You bring in e-learning and then try to scratch around for reasons to justify it because it's the latest technology.
The wise use of new technology can allow us to widen access, improve the quality of open and distance learning, and improve the cost-effectiveness of education. What are the particular issues that managers face in implementing their decisions throughout the planning process? And what are the elements that make the planning successful?
Well, the big issue, of course, is cost, and how do you control the costs of projects, particularly if you're bringing in external partners into this process. How do you manage that? And to do that, you have to be pretty much aware of your existing operations and how they're likely to change over time. And this is where it gets complicated, because the technology may require you to change your processes in order to benefit from the new technology. On the other hand, you don't want to change the processes so much that you bring your whole operation to a standstill. So you have to look very carefully at what the requirements are of the new technology and what the external consultants are telling you that you ought to be doing, because if they drive you too far into a change that you can't sustain or manage because it just puts too much pressure on the rest of the system, then I think you need to be very, very careful. The examples that I can think of, there are certain common elements to them. The first is that all the senior management were on board and had a common vision about where they wanted to go and where technology fitted into that vision. And when I say the senior management team, that's not just the academic side, it's the administrative side and the IT side, all were working to the same kind of goal for the institution. The second one is they tended to be pretty inclusive in the planning process. In other words, it's not been a top-down exercise, although the top management team must have a clear vision. They've worked very closely with deans and with individual professors to share that vision. And the vision indeed may come up. It can come from anywhere in the organization. The important thing is that there has to be some buy-in to a common vision about where you want to go. Now, this all sounds sort of terribly abstract, but without that, then all your planning decisions become very difficult. We went through a process in my own university where we actually made a video of how we wanted to teach in the future and took it to Senate and the board and said, is this the kind of institution we want to be in the future? Is this the kind of teaching we want to do? Once the board and Senate had said, yeah, that's the way we want to go, a lot of decisions then become easy further down the chain, because all the time you've got some kind of criteria or something to check your decisions against and say, will it move us in this direction or will it hold us up?
Technology does throw into question the issue of access and openness. But the major issue is not to be driven by the technology. The senior management, in fact, have to make decisions about what technologies to use, and they have to create the right relationship between technology, teaching, and administration.